emergency 24-hour bag. It's like, okay, guys, outline the snow with this bag. The wind's blowing really strong, and we don't want to be blown off like the other helicopter. So doors open, you're coming out to this big howling thing. You're lying in the snow with this bag. And at that point, because it's so clear still, this wall coming in like this, or weather, and you can just see down to the base these two tiny helicopters taking off down there. Say it's a hot desert. First you leave buildings and cities, and the walls go, and then the trees go, and then the bushes, and then the grass goes. All of those things that hold us, that sort of keep us safe. And then there's nothing. It's just the sand, or the ice, or the water, and perspective goes. And there's nothing to hold us. There's nothing to hold our mind. And it starts to unravel. And so I made a little name badge saying Toby Strong. And I put it on. I think it was from the back of a cereal packet. Put it on. And so I snuck into this thing, and there were free drinks, and I had too many. And I found myself, for some reason, there was this giant stuffed grizzly bear. And I found myself sort of leaning on this thing, a little worse for wear. And then this gentleman walks up. He says, you are Toby Strong. You're the one who wants to spend a year in the south of France filming with me. And I went, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sometimes I meet people that impromptu I want to interview for the podcast since I'm so impressed by them. Toby Strong is definitely one of them. Toby has my childhood dream job. He's one of the nature top photography directors and cameramen in the world. He's a multi-Emmy Award winner, having worked with names like Sir Richard Attenborough, Martin Scorsese, and James Cameron. If you like wildlife documentaries like National Geographic or BBC, you most likely saw Toby's work. He has been in every corner of the world with every type of animal. We spent time together in Ibiza, and his stories in the wild are just amazing and crazy, as stealing the food from the lions after they kill the prey. We go into his experience with animals, what he has learned from them, uses in his own life, sustainability, and his deep struggle with mental health. This conversation was definitely one of the highlights of my summer. Sorry for the quality of the sound, but we were in Ibiza and it was cicada season and they were very noisy. Here we go.
Toby, thank you so much. We are on the perfect setting to actually do the podcast, and I've had the honor and the pleasure of being on vacation with you here in Ibiza and hearing about your amazing experiences. And I'm really honored that you're on the podcast, and I'm so excited about all these projects we are talking about on collaborating. And I think you have so much to offer to people from your experience that I'm so excited about our podcast now.
Thank you. I'd just like to say likewise, just to meet, it's a real honor to meet you and to hear your life experiences as well. And we sort of moved through the world with very similar passions and integrity and morality, but on different paths. And it's really beautiful to what we've talked about so far. And I want to explore with you now. I'm really excited about how they can come together.
Yeah, it's an approach 360, like we were talking about. Everything that you can learn, for instance, from wildlife and bringing into companies, into relationships, even into depression and mental health, which is something that we'll go a little bit deeper. Tell me about you. Who are you? Like, tell me about your life experience. There was already the intro, and we speak that you have 2 Emmys. You're on the way for 2 more. You're actually in between filming with Martin Scorsese in Italy, and you're on a way. You're on a short break here, and you're on your way to Los Angeles this week or next week. So it's like, and BAFTAs, and you've worked with James Cameron, you've worked with David Attenborough, Will Smith, like all these people that are a little bit like myths and legends. Who are you?
It's really funny. Yeah, it's so funny when you hear that back at you. I was born in England, in rural South England, in a small village. And from a very early time, I was always looking beyond the hills, beyond the next hill. And I grew up vanishing into books because I couldn't at that point vanish. So I disappeared into books on exploration. And just these explorers and amazing people around the world. And I wanted to follow in their footsteps. And I went to school. I didn't feel I fitted in at all. And I did really badly. And I failed pretty much every exam at school. Had to retake years and all sorts of things. And I struggled at school with unhappiness, with bullying. I went to university and studied civil engineering, which I loathed. I came from my family. No one had been to university, and it was a real privilege to do that. And I wanted to do something like Swahilian archaeology, art, the classics. But I felt I needed to do something useful. It would have been felt too frivolous to follow my heart.
Yeah, how do you pay the bills?
Yeah, exactly. So I did that, and that was. I don't have many mistakes. I feel I've learned from a lot of things, but regrets. One was doing that because it would be useful rather than what my passions. So I did civil engineering, and I came out with a very bad degree. But during it, I started to do expeditions and leading expeditions, and I thought that's what I would do. Is I would physically take people.
Which type of expedition?
So we went to North Africa and took about 16 people walking through the mountains. And then climbed Jebel Tubkal, the highest mountain, and to Slovakia, walking through the mountains there. And I did my own traveling, and I did some with the army, and I got a commission in the British Army and the Territorial Army, and I learned a lot from that. And I'm glad I did that training because where I thought my physical and mental limits were, they were way over here somewhere. And it was amazing quite early on in my life to realize I can go so much further.
I think that's something like regarding education that we were talking about as well in the survival courses. Learning about how you become an animal and actually how many of your limits are in your head. Like if someone tells you go and run a marathon now, you say like, no, I'm not prepared. I didn't train. But if your family's life depends on it, you run 2 marathons right away. And learning that and that mental toughness is really relevant.
And I don't think you can learn that on your own because you're only going to go as far as you think you can go.
You get on your comfort zone.
You get to the edge and go, that's as far as I can go. And it's only through other people, your guides, your masters, your teachers, your officers who are going to go, you're going over there. Yeah, wow, I could run another 5 miles. I literally didn't. So and finding those limits early on was massively beneficial, even though I didn't pursue that path. And then I after I bought a one-way ticket to Africa. I wanted to live there. I wanted to live in the bush and take people in and show them the wonder of Africa. And Africa was this big thing for me. I always wanted to go. And I almost lived in Botswana. I got residency there, and I came back to sort of say goodbye to my folks. And then I was introduced to camera work, and I realized that with a camera, rather than taking a dozen people, you can reach 12 million. And this such a powerful medium that you can show people the beauty of the world. I saw this beauty, and I thought I had to take people and go, look at that, look at the beauty there. But through film, you can show people how beautiful the world is. You can say, look at this, and you can also highlight injustice. You can highlight extraordinary people doing wonderful things and champion their cause. And so that's why I started down the route of filming and telling stories, a visual storyteller in a way. And from there, I kind of bullshitted to start. And I remember taking chances. I remember we all get chances. And I remember...
Can you tell the Toby story? I love that story.
There's a few stories. So there was... I was at the Wild Screen is the biggest wildlife festival. And it's every year in Bristol near where I was. But I couldn't afford to go. And so I faked. I made a little name badge saying Toby Strong. And I put it on. I think it was from the back of a cereal packet. Put it on. And so I snuck into this thing. And there were free drinks. And I had too many. And I found myself... For some reason, there was this giant stuffed grizzly bear. And I found myself sort of leaning on this thing, a little worse for wear. And then this gentleman walks up. He says, you are Toby Strong. You're the one who wants to spend a year in the south of France filming with me. And I went, yes, yes. And he had literally arranged to meet someone called Toby at 9 o'clock next to the stuffed bear. I have no idea.
You don't have no idea who that
Toby was. Literally to this day. And that was my chance. And I spent...
But did you have some experience or nothing?
Very little. At that point, I had almost zero experience. Well, I had belief that I could do this, but no one would give me a chance. So I spent a year in the south of France, making a film on insects and lizards and the people of the south of France. Then I came back and I was like, now I'm a cameraman. Silence. Give me a job. Silence. And at that time, the BBC, which was on one side of this road in Bristol, and there's another company called Tigris on the other side, both big companies. They're both making programs on Africa. Neither of them would give me a job. There's this guy called Patrick Morris on one side, and on the other side, I can't remember his name. Give me a sec. So at that time, BBC and Tigris were both making new series on Africa, and they wouldn't give me the work. So I went across to one side, and I talked to the guy in charge. I went, so look, I've talked to the BBC on the other side of the road, and they're prepared to do a share 50-50, cover costs, if they're good, if you're good. This guy Patrick went, yeah, okay. I then went across to the other side and went, just talk to them, they're happy to do a 50-50 deal on this. And I went, well, if he's happy, yeah. So it was a risk, but yeah, they both agreed to it in the end. I've told them since, and they're sort of both friends, so that was okay. But you've got to take chances, and you've got to say, yes, I can do it, and then start reading and figuring out how to do it. And then, yeah, and I wasn't, I didn't go to college and train at all, and I really wouldn't recommend people do. If you want to be a filmmaker, make films and learn on the ground. And then, yeah, and for the next 25 years, I've been going to the world's wild places. And I've got colleagues who devote their lives just to wildlife, and they're extraordinary. And within that, to long lens, that is their speciality, and I pay homage to them. I personally love people and animals. I don't really see the difference at all. So yes, I've just been with raccoons in Vermont for a month. And next I was doing a project for Martin Scorsese in Sicily with people about shipwrecks. I love both those things, and I don't really see a difference as a storyteller. And I love to weave them and to weave genres. And so I've done those, and I've carefully trod my way between conservation, undercover work, and it has been top-end wildlife, and
Why
then top-end
work.
So we sometimes you have to. Sometimes there are many ways we need to get our story across about conservation. Whether it's making things like Planet Earth, Blue Planet, when you are making extraordinarily visually stunning things that people will watch. We only care about things we love. So you engender a passion, hopefully amongst the young, that they start to love these things. And by loving them, they'll care about them.
I was listening to your interview on Variety, and one of the things that you mentioned was exactly, I make these movies. It's not only about entertainment.
Yep.
This is about creating a passion on the younger generations, so that they see the beauty there and that it's worth to preserve and conserve and promote.
Yeah, exactly. So we have that. And then we have more direct action to highlight what's wrong. And we made a film, Warlords of Ivory, where we went into the Congo, into Togo, and we went undercover. And we were in very dangerous situations.
I've been in Congo, in Virunga, and it's literally a shit show. Like it's dangerous. It's like, I think it's the most, with all my trips, I think it was where I felt that I was more at risk with the whole guerrilla situation and all the warriors and interest from the oil companies and everything. It's such a mess that
you do feel very powerless. And two occasions in there, I thought, So we were in Garamba National Park, and the rangers there look after, the animals as best they can, but also the people. There is no one else. And the Lord's Resistance Army heard we were there and texted through saying, we know you're there, we are going to come and kill you. And we had to somehow try and get out. We drove in through villages, smiling kids, everyone waving happy. When that text came through, we couldn't leave that night. We got a plane, hopefully came in at dawn. We drove out, the villages were silent. We were driving towards where the LRA were coming from to kill us. and we managed to get out. Over the next months, the LRA killed pretty much every ranger we worked with. From there, we went into China undercover and into the ivory carving workshops in Beijing. And then we realized our phones were being listened to. It coincided, it was for Nat Geo. So the story coincided with a Nat Geo cover article by the journalist Brian Christie, who's a friend who was on that. And someone leaked the story. It was like, you cannot let this get out while we're in country. It's really dangerous. And someone had leaked it. So we're in China undercover, and it's leaked, this story. And we're starting to hear phone calls and seeing people on phones looking at us and things. And we got out, but it was really touch and go. And also, you feel, when you're doing that in China, you feel really scared. Yeah. So
a good guardian angel you have.
Yeah, I've got a few. Yeah, I've got a guardian angel who practically told us to get to the top of a building at a certain time, and a helicopter would pick us up. He was a very practical guardian angel, and I only call in those favors very occasionally. But yeah, so we do these things to engender passion, but then we also need to do things like that. And that film changed CITES policy. Apparently, Obama watched it, and it affected him burning the ivory stockpile in America, which then triggered to China burning their ivory stockpile. So you can do direct action as well. And I like to be able to do all those things. It's nice.
What do you think? Because you've been involved in so many different projects, and you have also these other passion projects, like you're supporting schools in villages where you go through. You have a store of furniture and homeware, and you want to promote like fair trade with that, education. So it's more almost like a foundation work that you're doing. What do you think is your life mission? Have you come across, or you just play it a little bit by ear and do what feels right?
Apart from doing a civil engineering degree, I've pretty much followed my heart. There's so much I'm passionate about. And we'll talk about mental health.
Yeah.
And I've suffered from depression my whole life. And I have these ups and downs. When I'm up, the creativity is really exciting. And I can get all these balls in the air. The problem is, when I'm down, those balls have people attached to them, people I care about, whether it's relationships or business. And they suffer, and I have to somehow keep all these balls. So life goals, I get very excited about lots of things. But as I'm moving through life, I realize they are quite aligned. And you talked about a foundation, and it does seem as though everything does start to fit together. Be that. So I think with regards to filming, engendering a passion for the natural world. And I want to show people there is beauty everywhere. And beauty is really underrated, particularly today. Beauty is really important. And people say, oh, with a $60,000 camera in the Serengeti, of course you see beauty. No, with your phone, with your $100 phone, in the rain, in England, there is beauty everywhere. And it's important to find beauty. I want to highlight injustice. I want to highlight those people who devote their lives on the ground to preserving and being guardians of our natural world. And I want to, with my shop, we support 65, 70 artists and makers who are trying to still keep going the crafts and arts, not just in England, but around the world, and to help them, support them, and bring them all together with, myself and my partner, and that. We're passionate about sailing, and to bring sail cargo, to help people who are doing sail cargo, and to trade in. I want to take people on the ancient routes through the Mediterranean, trade routes, and to people who devote their lives on the ground to growing olives and saffron, and bring all this together. And it's really important. And making, we sorry, it sounds quite disparate, but for the last 100,000 years, in the evenings, we would sit with our hands and talk and communicate, as we're doing now. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing, your hands are doing things. When I interview someone, I get them to do something with their hands. You can think, well, your hands are doing something. It's a lot easier for them, become less conscious. I want to set up spaces for people, for a grandmother to sit with a young boy, and they're both playing with clay. for them to communicate. We've lost a lot in my society in England. We've lost community, and it's to rebuild community.
I think I think a really important aspect as well that I've seen, and also in the business world, is the importance of multi-generation. So I have such amazing mentors that are so much older than me, and from mentors they became friends. And now, for instance, even on ChatGPT, um, I've been teaching them about it. I've been teaching them about AI. I think there's, and I see the same thing when I teach at university, and I see like people that are 1, 2 generations younger than me, how much I get from them, and these interchange. And I think as a society, we found a way of kind of like get rid of elders, where there's so much to be taken, and it can be so much more fulfilling. But we just have this cult of beauty and youth. That in the end, it's not that beneficial to society.
One thing that I haven't talked to you about that suddenly seems really relevant, an idea I've had for so long, is called the Sand Council, where there is so much. I get to work with so much wisdom within the Indigenous world. I travel around. There is so much wisdom there that is being lost. There is so much power in relatively young people in business. And I don't think they're properly supported. They do not have a community to support them. And there's almost, we villainize these people who have this power in business. And what we need to do is to support them. And what I want to do is this series of sand councils, where people come in a round space, sit in the sand around a fire, and they're supported. And yes, we can learn from the Indigenous wisdom that is there. And for these people to have a framework where they're supported, and they can sit there and go, I'm really scared. I've got 200 employees. I've got 2,000 employees. And I get up in the morning and I don't know what I'm doing. And for an old lady or an old man, go, that's okay. It's all right. We've got you. That's normal. But it just not to be one way as well. With new business and with new technology, we can support and help Indigenous cultures, Indigenous wisdom to be supported. Not to say, now you must have this, now you must have this, but to support and go, okay, let's support your culture. Let's support, but help you with that. So I would love to create a series of sand councils that are held and where these people are supported.
I love the idea. I was telling you, I think yesterday, about how it was, how when I worked in Honduras, and just taking a couple of like tools to these communities, developing ecotourism, giving them a reason why they should conserve their environment and protect it, do like conscious tourism. And we've helped them increase, I think, fivefold their revenues in 1 year. And at the same time, preserve their culture and keep the environment. Because they were going to do like tourism. We can say like sometimes, it's like, no, you have to keep them protected. It's very hard nowadays. But if you're going to do it, at least do it properly. And the alternatives they had were very simple. Lobster fishing, which basically they would get injured because of the depth at which they found lobster, and cocaine trafficking. And we just gave them like another option. We think, and I've learned so much there. And I think like if we can bring this to our society, I really love the idea.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't just have to be Indigenous wisdom supporting business leaders or the other way around, but it also is a cross-platform. So, been working on a project in Tahiti, and the people of Tahiti are doing extraordinary things. They've set up the largest shark conservation area in the world. They have kept their values and their Indigenous culture so strong, and that's what they want. And they're a very large voice in the global community, and a lot of what they're doing is really extraordinary and able to keep what they want, and then to take little bits that are coming in to support them. And I think for other Indigenous people or cultures that are struggling, to learn from the Tahitians
Mhm.
Yeah, and we can do that with film. We can physically take them to do that, but also through documentary and through lessons learned. It can be, we're not someone colonial coming in to tell you how to preserve this. We do not want that. What we want is, as filmmakers, to be able to document the Tahitians and those lessons, and to go, look, these guys over here, this is what they've learned, and do you guys want to get together? And for us as filmmakers and within the business world, to facilitate this conversation, to bring these people together, I think it could be really powerful.
And let's go a little bit into, since we entered it, we've already entered several topics that we'll go through after, but let's go to conservation, which is something very important to you. So you've been with every type of environment, ecosystem, habitats, all types of animals, and you've been into the wild for the last 30, 40 years. What's your perception from someone that has been in the field? What's your perception about, which is for me is very relevant, someone that has visited these places throughout time? What's really changing? Because you have people discussing with a lot of political interest, climate change is real, is not real. It's like, what have you seen?
This will not be the positive point of the podcast. And the other thing I'd like to say at this point is I'm not an expert in anything. I have a beautiful eye that I'm able to articulate to others.
You've been there.
I'm a group of a very few people who have been able to see a lot of the natural world, and in that I can tell you what I've seen. But without an expert viewpoint. So,
I would say, like, I grew up with National Geographic, all these different documentaries, images. I think most of us have seen and are passionate about the natural world through your eyes and the eyes of people like you, because I've had the chance to be in a few places, but it's compared to you, it's nothing, and most people never were lucky enough to go there. So actually, we see the world through your eyes.
So within the last few years, I was in Antarctica, and I was down there, and there was an international group of scientists there, and I was talking to the head of British Antarctic Survey. Thwaites Glacier is the biggest glacier on the planet, and it's there on the West Antarctic ice shelf. There's a little lump of rock that's stopping it split off. It's going to go any second. As we're talking, it could be released. It in itself will increase water levels globally by about 60 centimeters. That's a fact. That will not change. The real fear, it's almost like a little piglet stuck in a doorway as the other piglets are trying to get out. The real fear is what's going to happen behind that. So when that's released, the whole Western Antarctic ice shelf could go. Estimated, you could be looking at 20 feet plus global sea level rise. We don't know that, but Thwaites is going. He was in London talking to the heads of London, going, London is pretty much going to be untenable within the next few years, and they wouldn't listen because they don't know what to do about it.
Venice, Miami, those are cities that would
within the next few years, that will happen. I was then on the Tibet border with Nepal, again with the British Antarctic Survey. We know how much the glaciers are retreating. We don't know how much ice is left. So they had this huge boom, like a sonar, and they were flying in a helicopter around all the Erebus valleys, taking measurements. So within about 50 years, in the winter it's fine. The rain falls on the Himalayas and it fills the great rivers of Asia, the Ganges, Brahmaputra, the Indus. That gives everyone water. And if you think about the Himalayas, that water is going into China, into Pakistan, into India. In the summer, it's only the glacial meltwater giving everyone their drinking water. Within 50 years, we're going to lose 40 to 50% of that, if not more. An estimate, I was told, before the end of this century, we're looking at about 1 billion climate refugees. In England, we're up in arms about a few desperate people coming across the channel because of terrible situations they're leaving. just look over just the horizon. We're looking at 1 billion climate refugees. That will not change. I've been in Indonesia and I have seen the greatest rainforests razed to the ground now for palm oil. I've seen the devastation to the oceans, the plastics floating in it. I've recently in Kenya, I stood up to my waist in detritus, a lot of it from us in Europe, with little kids as the new lorries are dumping it and they're scrabbling through it to try and find some food.
I saw that in your podcast.
Yeah, and
that you were describing as you are walking through like the trash dump.
Yeah, and that is our trash. The outlook is terrible. We've crossed the line. I was with Sir David Attenborough in Kenya to do a piece on the last 2 northern white rhinos. There were 3. There was a male, and I filmed him being loaded to come out to Africa, so hopefully they would mate. He died, and we stood next to his gravestone, and it reads, "Here lies Sudan, the last male northern white rhino." We're at a place where we're losing something as emblematic and extraordinary as a rhino. They're now declared extinct. Each day, I think it's almost 200 to 400 species that we're probably losing. They will not come back. So the outlook is everywhere I go. Even if it's not direct, I was in Mongolia with a family talking, the gentlest people who moved as nomads across the plains of Mongolia. Global warming is warming. The other effect is the climate change. That means areas on the coast have that cooling and warming effect. Inland, you don't get that warming effect. So what's happening is the winters are getting more brutal. So these herds people who have lived this way for tens, hundreds, thousands of years, their animals are dying because of the brutal winters. It's because of our actions the other side of the planet that these gentle people's lives are being destroyed. There is nowhere, and I talk to my friends who we do this job all the time, there is nowhere we have been where we are not seeing the effects of our actions on the climate.
And people, I think it's interesting because it looks all so remote.
Yeah.
And it looks, no, it's like, we'll just send some money to save the dolphins or whatever, and it's all good. But people are not really understanding that they are actually talking about their survival. And not only about, it's going, first, if it's going to get hotter, it's like, it's not that you just turn the AC up because you're starting to have like water crisis. You start having water crisis, energy crisis, like all these different things. But then there's also something that is very, people don't realize this. When you have like a really strong human catastrophe emergency, you need shelter, you need water, and you need guns. Because people start to revolt. And people think, oh, I'm here. Yeah, you're here until you get like 1 billion people that have to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Safety is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And it's going to get to your front door. And it's not going to knock. It's just going to go through it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what hit you. But we are just blind to it and on acting like in advance.
And we will not change until we have to. That's not the human way. So up until this year, we talked to friends about this a lot, and you know, and then this summer, literally now, I've just been in Sicily. It's 48 degrees, and a lot of the island was burning. It's same in Greece. So it is starting to get closer and closer. The problem with elements of North America and Europe, it's quite temperate, so the effects will be last. If you look at Australia last year, Australia has been on the front line for a little while now with the wildfires. And because of that, an independent party who was running on climate change won. Because it is knocking on their door. It is burning their door down. And that is why, finally, those people are getting into positions of power, because it is the most defining thing. we're still worried about immigrants and job safety and other things. Yes, it's important to certain people, but very soon this climate thing will be burning your house down, and it becomes the most important thing. And at that point, it's probably too late. By the time that Europe is on fire, Northern Europe and North America, by the time they're on fire, it's too late.
What can we do? I think I work a lot with technology. I think like people are like AI might help. Yeah, sure. Actually, one thing, nuclear fusion might help and bring energy, almost free energy that would allow. But those are all solutions that I think they're wishful thinking because they're not proven yet. What can people do, in your opinion? Besides governments, it's like people that are listening to us.
Yeah, I don't know, and I get really sad about it because I don't have clear answers. Again, I'm not an expert. I just see these things. When listening to people who are a lot cleverer than I, they say as individuals, there's very little we can do. But as community, as a hive, we can through purchase choices. If no one bought battery-reared chicken eggs, none would be made almost instantly because there is no point. If we stop buying plastic bags, they won't make plastic bags. So as who we vote in as a community is of vital import. So I think as community we have power. As individuals we have very little. But that's where the strength and importance of community comes back in. Again, I personally don't know, and it keeps me awake at night. But listening to wiser people than I, that is what they have said.
And moving a little bit, because I think another solution is creating conscious leaders. And one of the things that we've been speaking a lot about, with my experience also teaching at several business schools and the horse therapies as well, which approaches me a little bit to like the animal world and the lessons. There's so much we can actually learn about animals, wildlife, that we can bring into relationships, that we can bring into corporations, that we can bring into our everyday lives. And we've been talking, and I'm really excited about like collaborating with you on this matter and bringing it to companies, bringing it into universities. And one of the things that we've been talking about these days is like lessons that we can take. I was taking some notes. I think about some of the stories, and I think this is going to be a particularly long podcast because I want to hear them in detail. I have a couple of notes here. So you have a story about going and get meat from the lions. And which is a lot about self-belief. Can you tell us about like the relevance of self-belief and that story with the lion?
We called it self-belief, didn't we? It was on a series called Human Planet. I think I made 13 years ago or something. And one of the stories is with the Dorobo people who live sort of Kenya, Tanzania area. And they are traditionally hunter-gatherer. The Maasai live in the same area, but the Maasai live more with cattle. And the Maasai often don't know the Dorobo are there. They live in the shadows. And they have an extraordinary relationship with lion. And often the Dorobo will be stalking an antelope, and they'll look over, and lion is stalking the same one. They kind of very similar eyes, and they have the same knowledge of the land. But what they'll do is they'll wait. And we waited with them in this overhang, this beautiful rock, with some cave art on, and tens of thousands of years Dorobo had waited. And it was near dawn, and they heard the lions make a kill. I was like, okay. So we headed over there. We had a Land Cruiser, and my friend was filming on the long lens, and I had the camera on my shoulder, and we got there. And it was a wildebeest. And there were 13 lions, including some cubs. And I filmed lions for many years prior to this.
I love you saying on a podcast saying lions are the most boring animals in the world. We have to wait
God, they do
23 hours.
nothing.
They do nothing. They sleep for 23 hours, and then 1 hour, you have to be ready for 23 hours for wherever they decide.
Then they'll kill something behind a bush. It's like, oh, I missed it. Yeah, but you don't get out of your car. You stay in your vehicle with your tripod on in your car. And yet I was there, stood behind this Land Cruiser, and you could see the lions over there with this. They're all eating, and they're over. And like I remember that director saying to me, like, "You do not need to do this. Like, don't do this." I was like, "You're only going to get this chance once in your life." And Rakita was the head guy. He must have been 60 or 70. So it's like, if he's been doing this his whole life, he knows what he's doing.
And he's this age, he probably
knows what he's doing. Maybe if I do this one day, I'll get to talk on a podcast about it. It'll be a story worth it. So Land Cruiser pulls away, and they stand up, and I'm behind them, and we start walking towards 13 lions on a kill. So I've got my eye in the eyepiece like this, so I cannot see anything this side. This eye is doing this desperate scanning of, oh my God. That was no protection. And like lionesses, when they hunt, like they come in for the kill, they'll snake in on this like silent right there. You're like waiting, this could be happening anyway. They didn't run, they didn't shout, they didn't bang anything. Eyes locked on the lions, and they just walked calmly straight in. I think they even talked amongst themselves. I don't remember. And the lions were there. They are the apex predator in that habitat. This is their world. Humans run from them. They know that. Yet these three humans were just walking, and the funny one behind the camera, were walking towards them, and it didn't make sense.
Oh, and you were the last one.
I was the last one at the back. Yeah. So it didn't make sense what was happening. And they were just like, hold on, something's wrong here. Something is way off script. This is not what's supposed to happen. They knew they were in charge, but those people were behaving as though they weren't. And it must have been maybe 10 feet, 3 meters. Perhaps one lion broke, a youngster, and it just backed off snarling. And at that point, the others saw that, and they all just backed off. And they were all snarling, but they must have gone about 20 feet back. Like, this is wrong. And the three guys, cool as cucumber, pulls out his machete, bends down, whips off a leg, not a lot, throws it over his shoulder. They turn, laughing, and just start walking off calmly. At that point, I'm then following them. So they've got them there, me here, and then the lions watching as someone's just nicked their lunch. And just, it was the longest, it was about 100 feet, I think, back to the vehicles. It was the longest distance ever, just the back of your hair. Everywhere. It was like I'm waiting for these claws to. But obviously, we made it back, and we ate that meat that night, and it was. I've not enjoyed a meal more,
Sure.
And just the respect for. I had a mouthful of meat. I was like, we go buy some meat from a supermarket or something. We have no idea the animal's life or what's gone into it. We just hand over some money and we get that. These guys literally risk their life to get that meat for themselves in the village. I was such respect for them. And it was later thinking about it and talking with you and about how that translates perhaps into the world, that calm, super calm belief and not doing anything out of the ordinary, but just calm confidence in yourself, how far that'll take you.
Well, with you, it happened a lot as well with the stories you were saying about like when they came to you and it's like, are you the guy that wants to record in the south of France? You're like, yes. So attitude is like, I have a friend of mine that is like, life is actually has it tattooed. Is like, life is 100% attitude, and definitely like the self-confidence that you project. Well, we're in Ibiza, and even to get into clubs, it's like if you go with attitude, it gets easier. It's also a big jungle here, very different type of jungle.
What do you think with regards to, because my son is he's 17, about to go out into the world, and for me, I know the wild bits. I'm not great at the social bits or the business world. A calm confidence, not ego, but a self-belief and the ability to look people in the eye and walk up to them be they a hunter, be they a farmer, be they a CEO, I don't know, whoever, and to be able to be open but confident. Do you feel that is perhaps even more important than your qualifications from school and university? Or
I think so. I think education became a luxury good. So it's like Louis Vuitton.
Yeah.
It's like if you see like a lot, you get the credit. And actually, I was speaking with Finn, your son,
yeah,
and he was telling me about that he wants to travel. I think a combination of both can be important.
yeah,
I do believe. I think education is very outdated. The
Yeah.
way we educate, still there's some value to it. Probably not in the exact format.
Yeah.
But there are things to be learned.
Yeah.
What I don't believe is when you only have those qualifications.
Yeah.
And you don't have any real world. Now, when you go out, I think definitely. Like if you have attitude, if you have self-confidence, if you believe in yourself, I would. If we have to balance between one and the other, I would say that's probably even stronger. And the other is the ability to take risks.
Yeah.
A lot of people spend their lives, and I see with a lot of with so many people, it's like I want to do this when the moment is right. The moment will never be
No.
right.
No.
It's like when's the right moment for you to approach the lion? Never. It's like
You'll never be ready.
you take the risk, and then when you go and you have the attitude, because the attitude, I think it's because often people are like, "Oh, you're bluffing." Yes, but by bluffing, you're also tricking yourself into believing you can do it, and you're pushing yourself further.
Yeah.
So I think it works both ways.
Yeah.
So I do believe those skills, if we have to compare them and weight one against the other, I think these are fundamental and even more important.
Yeah.
What I like about education, and education doesn't have to be like the typical formal education, but it's like I prefer not to pay for my mistakes. So if I can speak with you and learn from you, doesn't mean I won't make my mistakes, but it saves me a lot of time. So you can get that through mentors, through reading, through YouTube videos, through life experience. And we were actually speaking with Finn as well about extreme sports.
Yeah.
On extreme sports, after having broken I don't know how many bones in my body, when I go into something new, get a good teacher at the beginning, train me well, and don't train me like, oh, just when things go right. It's like, what happens when things go wrong? Because maybe
pay for good equipment.
Pay for good equipment, pay for good education, and prepare for that 1% of times that things go wrong. So that's where I think education pays off and saves you a lot of time and money, and can actually catalyze your learning curve.
I think one thing I was thinking recently is that maybe that confidence gets you into meetings, it gets doors open, it gives you the opportunities, but at that point you need to have the goods to back yourself up. So it'll give you more chances, but it's no point having a chance if you don't have the goods to back it up.
Yeah, some people say that luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
That's it. Yeah.
So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think from there, like another thing that you were telling me about is actually prepare for when things go wrong. Like you're telling me you were working with Prince William as well.
And I think the other one was redundancy, isn't it? And I think I worked last year with Prince William, and it was called the Earthshot Prize, and we had 7 or 8 times working with him, and because of his schedule, we had a very limited time.
Because the whole royal family is very much into conservation, right, and environment.
Yeah, I've worked with William a bit now, and I find him to be deeply impressive and a very gentle, kind man. Extraordinary. And we would have a very limited time. So myself and Ben, my assistant, we prepared and prepared and prepared. And we'd prioritize what was going to happen. So yes, we would say we'd have 40 minutes. We were told we'd have 40 minutes. Invariably, they would turn up like, You got 24 minutes. You got 8 minutes. It's like, okay. But we had triaged. So we could cut out those things because we knew we could still walk away with a complete package no matter what was cut out. And we'd prioritize those things. And we had to have 3 levels of redundancy. We had our main cameras. And there was one occasion, it was the first time in London. 2 of our redundancies failed and we were able to move, just a look. It was like, okay, move to the next system. We had to move to the 3rd system. And we had our time shortened. But because we'd prepared it all before, and we knew if something went wrong, we prepared for that 1%. And then you're good to go. And you can still, when the moment happens, you're prepared for it.
And I think there were a couple of things I would love to connect with the business world, because you were also like you're talking about priorities, and if you get it's the 80-20, of Pareto's law, that 20% of your work brings 80% of the results. And you had this situation with the helicopter as well. That can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was down in Antarctica, and we did a number of things, but one of the ones I was most excited about was to go to the top of Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus is the highest mountain volcano in Antarctica, on the continent, and it's fairly active, and you fly there by helicopter. So, but you're up there in 15-20 minutes, but you're from sea level. And because of the effective pressure, which I don't fully understand, you're at about just over 5,000 meters. So that's proper altitude. Yeah. So you're going from 0 to over 5,000 meters in 20 minutes.
You basically can't. Usually you have to do what?
So normally you're climatized.
Yeah, but so, 1,000 meters a day or not even so that.
Yeah. But there you're going straight up to one of the most dangerous places on the planet with the winds. So we were supposed to have 3 days filming, because at the top of the mountain you have all the snow, but the hot air that escapes creates these fumaroles, these extraordinary ice caves that are constantly shifting and morphing these beautiful sinuous shapes. And then they become these chimneys that emerge from ice, and then the hot air escapes. So we got up there by helicopter, and the guy said he's going to stay there, the pilot, make sure everything's cool. Well, okay. We didn't get days. We got down to 1 day because of the weather window. And we got up there, we're like, you know what, you don't have a whole day. You got like 4 hours. Okay. So our mountain guide led us through the snow. We're like, instantly, we're having to carry all our kit through the snow, this extraordinary landscape. You're on top of this thing, looking out over to the open sea. It's frozen sea here. You look out where Scott and Shackleton's huts were, and the open sea, and beyond that, the orcas are waiting for to come in. And it was blue. It was amazing, but it was minus 30 odd. And so we worked our way, and we go past a deformed helicopter that had been blown off the mountain.
Just to give an idea to people, because people are like altitude, and they have no idea if they haven't been at like 5,000 meters.
Yeah, it's like a third of your air.
Yeah, every step, it's painful, and even your brain is not thinking right.
No, you don't have the clarity. And so, third of your air that you would normally have. So we worked, and we found this one fumarole. The guy said, this is the one. So he broke in with his ice axe.
After seeing already an helicopter.
Yeah, you walk past that. Yep. Yeah. And it's a lethal place up there. And we put this rope in. We then rappelled down inside this fumarole into these ice caves. From minus 30 to about plus 30. Instantly. Because of the hot air that's coming up from the volcano. So you're stripping down. And the guide is there. He's like, okay, guys, you got your 4 hours. I'm staying in contact with the pilot. We start to prepare. This is myself and Ollie, who was working with me. It's so beautiful in there. It's like this cathedral of ice and silence. The colour coming through the ice. It's beautiful. And ice crystals. But the moment we arrive, the ice crystals start melting. So we were working, and then the guy's like, it's 2 hours. Check it. 15 minutes later, you got 1 hour. And we're like, okay, scrub that, scrub that, scrub that. And we're starting to triage again, prioritize what we had to get to walk out with the sequence, because we're not going to be able to come back here. The amount of people who get to go into an ice cave on top of Mount Erebus in Antarctica is tiny. No one had stood where we stood. And then it was, we leave now. you trust your local fixer, your local guide. And if they say move now, you move now. You don't question it, ever. Like, okay, we packed our kit. But we'd prioritise. So we were able to walk away with a sequence after an hour and 20 minutes. But at the start, we'd been told 3 days because we'd done that. We threw our kit in the bags, kit back on, climbed out. We emerged into this howling wind. It was minus, with wind chill, I have no idea, 50 to 60 minus, I don't know. And there's that film Sahara, where you have that huge wall of sand that comes in. We looked and there was this weather system coming in from the sea. You could see this thing moving in. If that hit us, the weather can come in for 2 or 3 weeks. We would not have made it. If that hit us, we would not have made it. We back past the broken helicopter, into our helicopter. We threw our stuff in. This Australian pilot's like, okay, let's go. Pushes the button, big red button. It's like, goo, 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 goo. Goo, 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 goo. Oh, that's not right. Helicopter broken. He pulls up the walkie-talkie. He's like, okay, base camp, we have an emergency critical 1. We need evac now, now, now. He's like, okay, guys, we had an emergency 24-hour bag. It's like, okay, guys, outline the snow with this bag. The wind's blowing really strong, and we don't want to be blown off like the other helicopter. So doors open, you're coming out to this big howling thing. You're lying in the snow with this bag. And at that point, because it's so clear still, this wall coming in like this, or weather, and you can just see down to the base, these 2 tiny helicopters taking off down there. They're screaming up at full speed. And they're coming in front of this front, and they land. We dive in, doors closed. We literally peel off and drop in front of this weather system. We're that close. And it was the pilots had their redundancy. That safety was ready. Those helicopters were waiting in case. We had our redundancy with the filmmaking. The guide was checking constantly. But everyone there was an expert in what they were doing and had multiple levels of redundancy, which nature can just switch like that. So it's having things in place ready and being able to adapt instantly. Don't be stuck to your plan. I'll always storyboard. I'll always think about what I'm going to film and plan it meticulously. The perfect images, the perfect scenes. It won't ever be that, but you're starting from a place of this will be perfect.
Tell us about storyboard, because it can a little bit compare to even strategy on companies.
I think from talking to you, it does seem as though it's the case. You start from an ideal. What would be the ideal scene? How would be each shot would be perfect? In a documentary, it will never be that. But by starting with the perfect image, that's what you're striving for. And also, when you go into that situation and it changes, and things can move quite fast, there'll be a key point. So, say for instance, you're with a vet and you have an elephant that has an abscess and you need to dart it and that elephant's going down. You draw it, and the key moment you need to get is that dart hitting the elephant. And then, for instance, on the ground, the vet working on it, because you've drawn it exactly how it is. When you're in that moment, and there are rangers around, there are other elephants about. I've done it with gorillas now trying to come in and attack when you're trying to save. Because the night before, you drew that. You know exactly where you need to be at that moment to get that key thing. And if it suddenly is pulled out and you can't carry on, you've got those key shots again. You've prioritized it, you've drawn it, you've imagined exactly how it should be. So when you're in a high-stress situation, you're able to go into getting the shot you need to tell that story. And I think putting that planning in place, with starting with your ideal, and then having those levels of redundancy and triage of situations in case they change, it does strike me that what you were talking about is similar to the business world.
No, it makes all the sense. Like also, like you can then life happens and you have to adapt. You adapt and everything, but you have to know what's the goal, where are you going. Also, because you have to understand the difference between managing priorities and managing urgencies. Yeah. And often we focus on urgencies and we forget about the priorities. And sometimes the urgencies are things we can scrub off, like you were saying that happened to you in the cave.
And I think another one there that just strikes me is this last year I made Secrets to the Elephants. And we had limited time, budget, and we were there, and it was a day, and we went into it, and I was going to film a really important story about this family of elephants in this riverbed. But we got a radio call that way up north, 3 days drive up north, there's a dry riverbed where no elephant had been seen for years. There was a bull elephant walking through it. And it seemed to be a reliable source. And I had to make the call, do we stay here, or is that now become the story? And you have to be prepared to let go of your certainty. Again, it's risk, but the risk of that has now become the priority. And we took that risk, and it's extraordinary. This lone bull walking for days down this riverbed where no elephant had been seen for years.
Bull is a male elephant.
Male elephant, yeah. And this bull elephant with this whole story that goes with him. And he walks all the way to the sea, and there's this shot of this elephant in front of the sea, which you just don't get. And it became an absolutely integral part of the film. And I think we can draw a storyboard, be prepared to throw it away. You always have to get the bigger picture. You always have to be able to keep stepping back in a situation and go, we leave this now. That has become the story. Or that has become, in business, I'm sure you can find similarities.
Yeah, you also have, sometimes, especially when you go with startups and everything, often you have to pivot. Because what you learn, and right now I'm working in a company called Katrina about the funeral business and death, which is like a market like nobody wants to talk about that. Even we call life insurance when it's about death. It's like, and nobody wants to talk about it. And it's completely like antiquated, old-fashioned industry that has so much impact on people's lives but everybody's like not wanting to talk about it. And once we got in, it's like we started realizing that a lot of our beliefs were not right. So we've been on it, like actually from launching the company to now, we had to like adapt things. We had a storyboard, but then was like, okay, we got there and the elephants were not where we thought they were. So it's like, okay, where are they? And you have to take chances, and you don't know what's coming as well. So that capacity to adapt quickly, it's
and something that can seem a challenge, or can seem as though it's just destroyed what you're trying to do, can end up being obscenely powerful and positive. So
positive.
I was waiting I timed a shoot to get the rains arriving in the desert for these elephants again recently. And it was just going to be some water coming down, the elephants meeting it. Turns out it was the worst storms in 150 years. And we had to flee to escape the flood for our lives. We had to get out the riverbed. And I remember cursing, going, oh no, it was going to be so beautiful. We then filmed that. That is then the story. And it destroyed my concept, my storyboard of that scene. But by embracing it, it became the most important, perhaps, strand within the film. And so what can seem as though it's destroyed can, from another angle, can seem a complete benefit.
I would really actually tell people that they should listen to your podcast, which is Through the Wild Lenses, by Toby Strong on Spotify. I've been listening to it the last few days, and the description you make, I think you had like a bull next to you as well, right? Waiting for the water to come, and then you had to drive for your lives. But the level of detail, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. The level of detail you describe it, I was actually driving last night back home, and I was there. It's an amazing story. Not only the amazing story, but how you describe it. I would really recommend people to check your podcast. And I love several episodes, but that one in particular, I find it fantastic. Then there's something that I really, I've always questioned myself. And here I think we have two questions. I remember this Vietnam picture of this child coming. And I think they were running away from napalm, and the child is burned. And there were a lot of questions about later, and I think even actually the photographer, I believe, I'm not sure, he committed suicide at a certain point. And there are two things. there's a big separation between you and the subject through the lenses. So I think this brings us to two things. One thing is, how do you protect yourself?
Yeah.
Because I think you have great stories like that. You're so focused
Yeah.
that you actually, there's a lioness coming
Yeah.
on the back, or
Yeah.
a snake crawling over you, something like that. And then there's another thing is, when is it right to intervene?
Yeah.
Because in this case, people are like, you have a camera, you're seeing a child
Yeah.
burning.
Yeah.
Okay, you won an award, but why didn't you drop the camera and help the child?
Yeah.
But also, if you drop the camera and help the child, the world won't know about what. It's not. It's like, what's the role here?
It's not a binary black and white on
Yeah.
this one. I think, and when I work with younger people coming in and we're going into difficult situations, it's really important that everyone has their own agency. And everyone will have their limits and everyone will have their own perceptions. I always try and say, if we're going into this situation, if you believe, particularly with people, and you can go and work with the tribe, and yeah, they're going to say, of course you have permission, because they don't know any different, really. And it's up to you. If you walk in and you go, you know what, yes, you've said okay, but you don't know how this will be used. You don't know in what context. And put your hand up and go, not happy. And then we stop and we talk about it. Because you can just bulldoze your way through. You can go, yeah, but we have to get this because it's for this commissioner and it's cost this many million and this. It's like, who cares? This is people's lives. And I think it is really difficult. And it's very easy, and there's so many experiments out there on this psychology, that you can be taken down a route and find yourself doing something that, because everyone else says you have to do it, you can find yourself in a very dangerous place that you yourself wouldn't do. So I think everyone needs to be given agency to put their hand up, and then we just stop and check.
And these are ethics in companies that are actually one of the biggest challenges we have nowadays in corporations.
Yeah, and you're sent out there to cover something, and if you don't film it, you're held responsible for that. And you go, well, I'm not sure they knew exactly what was being done. There's ramifications for that. With regards to the natural world, again, it's up to the individual. If nature is happening in front of you, I tend to let it unfold. But if in any way humans have been involved, I've been in a situation where cheetahs are extremely rare, and there were these cheetah cubs, and the mum went off to feed, and a troop of baboons were coming towards them, and there were a load of Land Rovers around, game vehicles, making a lot of noise. And the youngsters were calling, and the mum couldn't hear. And these baboons would come and rip those cheetah cubs apart. Humans were involved in that, and I stepped in and chased the baboons away with the vehicle. Was that right or wrong? I don't know. But for me, humans are involved, therefore I've got a right to be involved. And I've been a number of times, I worked, a quarter of a century with elephants. And if elephants have fallen in, I've witnessed elephants dying in the wild, and it's awful. And I filmed it. But if there's a situation where they've fallen into a well or something man-made, I'll get them out if we can. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to know.
How do you feel about it? Like, do you actually have the feeling and the emotion while you're filming, or it's something that you come after and it's like, whoa, I've witnessed that?
Oh, I don't know. I've had baby elephants die on my lap. I've cried a lot while I film. I'm very emotional and I cannot separate. You're talking about the separate subject of the glass gives you a sort of distance, and you can be lost in that. And that's why one of the things we've talked about, which is going to business, is who's got your back. If you're lost in the moment, who is the person who is scanning around and just pulls you out the way? My friend Nick, a number of times, has saved my life. It's like, no, we go now. And then again, you listen, you move instantly. I remember I was with Bushmen we were in this little scrape under a bush by a waterhole waiting for kudu to come in, and they were going to hunt. We waited 2 weeks, and they said, well, there was a leopard, distant leopard. I was like, that's amazing. And I got the lens. I was filming this leopard coming towards. Wow, this is brilliant. And I'm looking over their shoulders. And then they just grabbed me like this, and I put the camera down. The leopard was there, like 2 meters away. And they stuck an axe in my hand. I didn't know we had no language. They just grabbed me and pulled me, and we had to jump out and run at that leopard, because otherwise it was going to jump in and we'd have been gone. I was lost in that world of the image. So there is a separation. So I've just argued against myself. I've sobbed whilst filming, but one of our lessons there is who's got your back in those situations.
And another thing we've been talking about, like a lot of issues. I think probably most of mankind's issues are issues with communication, and we're sharing experiences also, like with. I was telling you a little bit about what I do with horses as well, and we were talking at dinner about how you go, and I think there are so many beautiful analogies in terms of communication. Let me try to phrase a couple of them that I've seen, and would love to take your take on it. You don't believe in hiding. You don't believe in like going to, and you've been with, you were telling me about the Arctic fox, you were telling me about bears, you were telling me about wolves, you were telling me about lions, you were telling me about all these animals. And what you say is you kind of get on the same energy level as them, right? So you empathize with them and you become almost invisible and neutral. So like, because we are used to see like people hiding, but you're in like some crazy situations and like where it's like the animal standing next to you, like you're telling me the lions can actually come and eat you. Yeah, it's like
I can hear a lot of my contemporaries, if they listen to this, going, "Oh, good, no." This is only my thoughts, and it's only my thoughts and how I think. Animals aren't stupid. And often they'll look and they'll see a little tent.
Let's put a disclaimer. People, if you see a lion, do not try and match their energy. Leave it for professionals.
If they see a little tent, they know there's something funny going on. It's like, what's going on? I had a lovely experience top of Arctic with Arctic fox, magical creatures. And I must have been 200 meters away, and it saw me and froze. I just talked to it. It's like, okay, I'm going to be here. I'm going to put my tripod up. I'm going to film you for a bit. When you're happy, we'll move a bit closer. And I had no pressure on me. So I just did this over the period of, it must have been an hour or two. And I ended up sat here with the Arctic fox where you are. It was very, very special to me. And with what you don't want, there's an ego involved. When you want animal to come and bestow its presence on you, and you feel so special and unique. But that doesn't serve that animal. Because if it knows, I can come to people, the next time it may be a kid, it may be someone who panics, that animal will get shot, or it will not serve that animal well. So you want to be invisible. You don't want to be seen as a positive, and you don't want to be seen as a negative. So you want to become invisible to it. If you've got one antelope grazing, there'll be other types of antelope, but it doesn't really see them because it's not affecting them positively or negatively. They just move through their world, and that's what you want when you're with animals, is to be a neutral presence. Species. Yeah. So you want to be a neutral presence, so that you can operate around it, so it carries on doing what it does in the world. And I found that as well filming people. I filmed at Burning Man. If I stand there like that in Burning Man, still, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb, and everyone's just going to stare at you. So you need to move. You move in the rhythm everyone else is moving, and you vanish. I did at Taiposan, the largest gathering of annual people on Earth in Kuala Lumpur. Extraordinary spinning, moving people. And for 5 hours, I danced and moved with them, and you become invisible, and it allows you the access. Similarly, I filmed in temples in Nepal, up on the Tibet border. You start dancing and swinging around there, you're going to stand out again like a sore thumb. There you need to be still and to still your energy. And you match your energy to your subject. Because in fight, and I think we talked on this with business, if you're operating from a fight or flight mode, that becomes the primal energy you're operating from. And it overrides everything else.
Yeah.
Only when you can set that aside are you able to communicate and be open. And that's when the magical transformation and communication can happen. So by matching your energy to a person, they feel safe and they're not afraid or they're not too excited, and you're able to communicate properly. And that's been over many years. I've observed myself around animals and people, and it's a very special thing to be able to do when animals and people trust you.
People try to personal. I think we've watched too much, like all these movies about Flipper, the dolphin, and all these things, and we tend to personify animals. Like, and I see that with the horses a lot. It's like people come and it's like, no, the horse is my spirit animal, and they want to come there. And it's like the horse really cares about my feelings. Like the horse will help you with your feelings. It doesn't care if you broke up with your partner. It's like it's irrelevant for the horse. It's just being the horse, and by being the horse, it helps you.
Yeah.
So take that instead of thinking that the horse is going to be like listening to your trauma. Like the horse will do what the horse has to do.
So true.
And if you're at that level and you're seeing like we are all beings, and because it's so, even a little bit arrogant, it's like you should be like me and you should cater to me. No, you are, even with people, it's like you have your personality, I have mine, and we can live like that and balance each other. And I think often we don't become like neutral or invisible. We're trying to bring people into our frequency.
Yeah. And do you, in your work with horses, does that resonate to the work that you do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think a couple of things, like I'm not totally self-taught, but I'm a lot self-taught. I bring my experience, and it's funny because the person that taught me, Lorenza, that I have a lot of like love and respect for, but often she was like, "You're doing things wrong. You're being disrespectful." And I was like, "Okay, let's talk about this. Why is this wrong? Why is this disrespectful?"
Yeah.
And then she would be like, "Okay, maybe you're right. I would have never tried it." And then a month later, I see her and I go to a session with her and she's doing it. I was like, wasn't I being wrong and disrespectful? It's like, yeah, I actually thought about it better and it actually makes sense. So this kind of evolution where you bring the formal knowledge, tying back to what we spoke at the beginning, like what I've learned through my experience in life, being in every aspect, bringing it on, trying it. And I really, for me, it's like, I don't care about the horse's name. I don't care about the horse's personality. I care about safety, especially for the people. First for the horses, because they have no option to be inside. Then for the people that I'm working with, and then for myself. But besides that, I try to flow with it and try to trust the process and the horses, because my expectations is like, I'm talking to you about whatever trauma you have, and I'm like trying, oh, the horse should do this. It's like, no, the horse should do whatever the horse has to do. It's not up to me to decide, because if not, it's my expectations and the horse is not doing absolutely anything there. Now, are there shots you didn't take because of the larger perspective? In the sense, this would be such an amazing shot, but in the big picture, I'll probably get killed.
Initially, when you started that sentence, things I thought of have been with Indigenous people, and I've put the camera down because it hasn't felt right. And there's not one situation where I've regretted that. I'm able to go home going, yep, I'm happy with that call. But with regards to Yeah, I mean, I think the one you're alluding to is when I spent 5 months in North America with bears. And they were sort of semi-habituated in that they love pecan nuts. And in the morning, they have a collar. So you find them, give them a handful of pecan nuts, and it's kind of the deal is, okay, you can follow me. But they're not that bright, and they'll just sort of wander off around a tree and come back and, who are you? And you're like, dude, I've just been walking for 4 hours. You have some pecan nuts. Like, okay. And then they'll go on. And I remember the early days when you get to the middle of the day and the bear would just fall down and have a sleep in the moss under a tree. And you're like completely tense, kind of like, what do I do? Oh, I should film it. Oh. And then after sort of a couple of weeks, you're like, yeah, I was asleep as well. You're sleeping here and there's a bear sleeping there. And then they wake up and you carry on. And they're sort of nibbling along. And I was with this one bear called Lily. She was big, like on all fours. She was probably like there, if not more. And you're walking with this bear through this forest, which is pretty awesome. And then we're middle of nowhere. And then she starts to be a little bit agitated looking around. I hadn't seen her like that. What's going on? Then suddenly she looks up and there's a wolf sat there. It's like, where did that come from? And then look around. There's like, I don't know how many, 8 to 12 other wolves just melted out of the forest, and they all just sort of stood. And at that moment, this huge screaming voice in me said, "Put the camera down. This is not the time to film." Yes, it's a situation. I don't know anyone else who has had that.
Surrounded by
wolves next to a bear. No one else has seen it. It would be unique footage, but everything in me said put the camera down, and I did, and I was utterly present, and I looked at the bear and I looked at each of the wolves and stayed completely present in that moment. That felt like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. Like, this is number one. You just, to get out of this, everything said to do that, and I did that. I don't know how long it went on. It could have been 1 minute, it could have been 10, 15, I don't know. And then they melted away. Bear went and just carried on walking.
Should you look animal in the eyes or not? Because people usually tell you.
Yeah,
like, and in the lions, they looked at in the eyes, and now you looked also at the wolves. It's like,
depends on the animal.
Okay.
Generally, yeah, you do. I was with the gorillas for 6 months in Rwanda and Uganda.
Yeah.
And there was one time I was with the researcher. We were walking on our own down this little gully, and suddenly, and the sub male, he was huge, came, and he was here.
Silverbacks?
Yeah, he was here like this.
Yeah, massive.
So I did this. Yeah, enormous. I did the sort of Diane Fossey looking down, and the researcher said, "No, with him you're okay." So I was able to look up, because normally the gorillas you do not. And I looked up, and I had his head here. And I looked into his eyes for a long time, and there's this extraordinary wisdom and wit. There's humor in there, and it was so beautiful. But so there's some animals, no, you don't. And there are other times with the gorillas when they were smashing through, and you'll just never look them in the eye. That's just dangerous. Generally, you do. Cats, you don't turn your back. I had a situation in Brazil with a again semi-tame but not jaguar, and I was working for a cameraman. I was very early on, and he told me, "Can you get me a battery?" And I ran to get a battery. I remember running, going, "You don't run from cats." And then these huge paws on the back of my head, and just oof onto the ground. And this jaguar head here, and it just licks my face. It's like, don't run from cats. Each animal is different. With the lions, with the situation with the lion, you do not turn your back. Bears, if you're walking and a bear walks into your territory.
It has happened to me, actually.
Yeah.
It was happened to me like in Peru, on the Inca Trail. It was like a cub. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if a bear walks into your territory, you stand up, you shout and scream, and you defend your territory. But if you walk into a bear's, you submissive and you back off quietly. So there's a lot of things to learn about different animals, and again, you learn that from the guys on the ground. Local knowledge, I guess, would be our business.
I'll definitely
switch over there.
And another thing that we were speaking about is regarding storytelling. And from there, I would love to go into other aspects of it. You're a storyteller, like you describe yourself. The video can lie. And another thing is how you relate and how you look at people. And you were speaking, you were telling today, if I see a praying mantis from above, it looks small. If I see a praying mantis from below, it's a fierce predator. So we should look people eye to eye, because even if you're looking at someone and you think we're being humble, but looking from below, that person is looking down at us. And it happens so much in real life. And I think it goes back a little bit to what you were saying of standing your ground and be confident and looking people in the eye.
That was really early on. It was the first job. It was like the fellow, the Danish guy who offered me the job in France. It was one of the first things I ever filmed, was a praying mantis. And he said, you don't, we do it all the time with our phones. We walk around, we see a cute kitten or a dog or a child. We just point our phones down, take a photo of it. Don't do that. Get on the level of it. And or below, like for me, with the world, the praying mantis is an extraordinary predator. So powerful, so strong. You get below it. And we developed camera systems to allow us to do that. Figure out a way to do it. He's only that big. But you get below and you look up. You see this monster of a predator. You know, a lot more powerful than something like a cheetah or a lion. And that's how you show that. And yeah, as we were saying, if you think of that in a personal sense, if you look down on someone, they'll have to look up to you. But this is personal. And that's how we should be communicating. And what we were saying just now as well is like, yeah, if you look up at someone, it means by definition they're going to look down on you. And who does that serve in communication?
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Now, I would love to go into another area, which is mental health, that you've spoken very openly about it. And I find that you spoke like, the way you speak about it is very beautiful, but also very important. I'd like to go. So yesterday I was coming home, like I mentioned, and I was listening to your story about the elephants, and I was blown away by it. And I was like, I want to be there. But if I'm there, I'm not going to see all this. The way I see the world is different.
Yeah.
And so Patrick Susskind has this book called The Perfume. And what I found fascinating about it is because usually we describe the world in terms of colors or vision. He described it in terms of smells. I describe it in terms often of actions. So I think sometimes I'm a little bit like the T-Rex. It's like, can only see movement. You look at the situation and you get all the details. And you see all this beauty. And I've seen you, or I've heard you doing that in that situation, or going through trash in Nairobi, or looking at the beauty around your home in Devon, and describing every little thing during the pandemic. I was like, how do I walk and don't see these things? So there's this genius to you that is very awarded and recognized. You work with some of the most relevant people in the movie industry. You have BAFTAs, you have Emmys, you have... But with this genius comes a certain darkness. And through history, we've seen this on many people. And I know you're aware how lucky you are in your life, but you deal with depression. Can you tell us a little bit about this because I think it's really relevant what you mentioned. People are like, oh, if you're miserable, you have a terrible life, you have the right to be depressed. And this is not a right. This is a curse.
Yeah.
But bring some other beauty to it as well.
Yeah. Hard to talk about. First thing, I would definitely argue the word genius.
I'll let that for me to decide.
That's your call. Okay. Yeah, I've suffered mental illness my whole life. As to what it is, I don't know. Different experts have said different things, and most labels I've had stuck on me. I have periods of great darkness and light. It has been a daily battle for my whole life. I have been blessed with the ability to see beauty and to capture beauty. Shadow of that is I've been able to have not many moments of joy. Or when I'm in these places, very few people get to go. And I look around and I see such happiness in all of those people with me. A sunrise over Raja Ampat in Indonesia, the stars over the salt plains of Bolivia, and to feel sad. It's a great weight to carry around. And I'm happy to carry that weight, but it's the burden it puts on those I love. It's terrible when I see it. And it's hard for the people I work with. It can be really hard to work with me. And I know it's really hard to live with me. And yeah, I am able to capture wonderful things, but it comes at a really big price. And is there a link between creativity and shadow and darkness? I don't know. Again, I've pondered this and talked of this and read on this for many years. Can you shine great light without dark shadow? And I don't know the answer. Would I give it up so that I could be light around the people I love? Yeah, probably.
And removing that part to be able to enjoy the beauty as well. I heard you like that you were in Bolivia crying and sobbing over the beauty that you saw there as well.
That overtook me. To stand in Salado de Uyuni and the biggest mirror on earth, hundreds of square miles of salt flat, and when the water's just right, you have perfect reflection. And to be at night with all of the stars above you, and you cannot see where it touches the horizon, and it carries on beneath you, and you stand there at the center of all the stars. I just erupted out of me and just sobbing. I don't know if it was joy or release or something, but I've been places where the utter wonder of the universe just overwhelms.
And how do you cope with it?
Not well.
How do you have any type of, your work seems to be like very meditative and you're able to be like behind the camera. It's a good place for you to be.
At times, I find that I'm unable to do a job, as in I'm able to clock in and clock out. I can't do that. So the things I do become part of me. I'm not able to distance myself from them, which isn't a good thing. So I am hugely affected in day to day, and that is very difficult. How do I cope? I don't cope well. So I will be in see people waiting through this detritus in Kenya and then try and come home. I struggle to move from one place. I go from the desert with people who have to travel 12 miles to get water. I then come back and then I go somewhere else.
One thing you've mentioned is, and you sent me a beautiful video about it, that if you allow me, I'd love to share it on our website. The beauty of the desert. And you mentioned, how was it? The desert is for mystics and crazy and lunatics.
Yeah, it's. I adore desert.
So repairing, no?
Yeah, it before it repairs, it destroys.
Yeah.
So deserts, they're not just hot. You have cold deserts. Antarctica is a desert, and the ocean as well. It's a cold, hot, wet desert. I find them the most magical of places. So when you start to enter them, say it's a hot desert, first you leave buildings and cities, and the walls go, and then the trees go, and then the bushes, and then the grass goes. All of those things that hold us, that sort of keep us safe. And then there's nothing. It's just the sand, or the ice, or the water, and perspective goes. And there's nothing to hold us. There's nothing to hold our mind. And it starts to unravel. And I don't think it's a coincidence that all of the great monastic faiths come out of deserts. And yeah, I believe they're the sort of birthplace of madmen and mystics. Your mind starts to unravel, and your demons come. Your first nights in the desert, you're visited by.
I've had it. I love it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard.
Come. And you got to let them come.
Yeah.
They need to say their thing. And deserts don't heal. The stuff comes, and it comes in torrents. And only at that point, my dear friend Paul, an incredibly wise man, his simple philosophy in life, it's like, as young as you can, go to the desert, literally. Go to the desert and bury your shit. Some shit you're born with, some other people's give you, it's still yours, own it. Go to the desert, dig a hole, bury it. Make peace with it. And then you can come back and get on with your life. And I find deserts extraordinary. They sort of mainline therapy. It's just hiking.
My experience has been like almost psychedelic. Like I had some of the deepest self-awareness and self-knowledge experiences in the desert. Yeah. Like it would be like the equivalent of an ayahuasca trip, and I joke that one of the experiences I would love for someone like a life partner, like a wife, mother of kids, whatever, that I would like for that person would experience is a survival course. Exactly through that, but also like through the sense of becoming an animal.
Yep.
And reconnecting with the animal nature. And the animal loses a lot of these like mental madness, like you call it, and has to shed all these things because it gets into survival mode. And I find that it should be part of like education.
Curriculum. Yeah.
The military, actually, I think one of the things that it would bring as well was a little bit that deconstructing yourself, pushing the limits. I didn't go to the army, but I think that definitely in society there's a role to it.
And another thing I think is so important that we do not have is coming of age for boys to men. I've looked at different cultures and read on this, and there's a lot written on it, but almost every culture had a coming of age from boys to men. And the similarities are extraordinary between them. You're taken from the village by men, not your father, taken, and you go through a series of ordeals. You're pushed and pushed and pushed through these different ordeals and challenges. There will come a night in the wilderness where you're on your own and you're visited by demons. They will come, and it's the long night. And the next day, there will be a rebirth. There will be you going through a tunnel, through an arch, through something signifying rebirth. But you're reborn as a man. And at that point, there is a celebration. And you're taken back to your village, your community, where you're then reintroduced to your parents as an adult. And I see a lot in our world, a lot of lost men, a lot of lost young men, and a lot of lost parents who struggle as their children become adults. And there isn't that, you don't have that ceremony where your child becomes an adult and there's a reforming of that relationship. And that ceremony, that coming of age, I think is so important. And I bemoan the loss of it in our society, and I think it would do us so much good.
Oh, especially now where the masculinity is taken as toxic.
Yeah.
And there are but nobody says what's positive masculinity.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of like people that are totally lost, both men and women, because they don't have these roles, and everybody's speaking on the negative. But where's the positive?
Yeah.
Where do you have to go as a man?
Yeah.
What should you aspire?
Yeah.
And people are lost. It's about criticizing. It's about demonizing. But it's like, where to go?
Yeah.
Don't tell me where not to go. It's like,
what do we do?
Tell me where to go. Yeah. I actually have a funny story. I went with some friends to Ethiopia to do one of those rides, which was jumping cows.
Yeah.
In the Omo, in the south of Ethiopia. But we were right there on the wrong week, which were very mad. So we ended up like going with the donkeys and jumping donkeys and doing a lot of crazy stuff. But it was our ride. We actually went to Ethiopia to do the rite of passage of jumping cows. Now, let's go a little bit. We've been with a lot in like deep subjects. Let's go a little bit. What have you learned from all these people? Now let's understand, like let's go a little bit on celebrities. Everybody loves celebrities. Sir David Attenborough, that I've heard you speaking very highly of him.
Yeah, there is no one like him.
In which occasions have you worked with him?
I've worked with him abroad, and in the UK, and now he's 97. So worked with him very recently. He's not traveling much at all. So working with him, doing interviews in England, but still at 97, he is the most extraordinary figure. Everyone talks of who will replace him. There is no one. It is the end of an era. To be in his company, to spend time with that man, is blessed indeed.
What have you learned from him? What you admire? Or...
He has self-belief. If he doesn't like something, he will speak it, and he will not do it. And we've been in situations. I remember on the top of a building in London, filming a closing piece for Planet Earth 2, and there's a helicopter circling, and it's like, "So David, this is what we're saying." It's like, "No, this isn't right. I want to say this." It's like, "Okay, but we've, and everyone's prepped this for months before to get to this place." It's like, "No." And he knows what this is costing. There's a helicopter there. There's all these things. There's this pressure. And he's like, "No, we'll do this." Okay. He sticks to his guns. And if he doesn't agree with it, he won't do it. And he's earned that right. And I find through my life, I've will do what seems best for everyone, and to chameleon into other people's energies, to try and find a path of least resistance. I was bullied a lot at school, and I hate conflict, and so to avoid it, I'll try and weave my way through. But that's not always the best result at all. And I think someone like Sir David will stand and he will say, "No, that's wrong. I'm not doing that." And there's always respect for people who do that, who have strong boundaries. And personally, I see it as conflict. And to avoid conflict, I don't have boundaries. But when I meet strong men such as yourself, you have boundaries, and I see the wisdom in that and the strength in that. Strong boundaries, commitment, and following passion for Sir David. He's done it 70 years. He's still going at 97. We just recorded the commentary for this big oceans thing with him, which won't be finished until he's 100. That's amazing.
Who else comes to mind?
It's not celebrities. It's people on the ground. So
Tell us some inspiring stories that were like.
I told you we were in Garamba, the rangers there. They protected the elephants, but they were the only defense for the women and children against the Lord's Resistance Army. We spent a couple of weeks with them. Amazing men. And when the LRA came, they stayed and they fought. And pretty much every one of them was killed.
The silent heroes.
Yeah, they're our guardians. Yes, we give some money to save dolphins or pandas. It's great. It's good. It's those people day in, day out who give their lives to preserve our wildlife heritage. We can, I'm on a podcast with you. I get to go film them. I shouldn't be here. It's those people. The presenters, the Sir Davids, yeah, great. It's the people who give up their lives to stand up for an animal, to stand up for a patch of rainforest. Utter heroes and heroines who daily do that and daily lose their lives in the battle to protect our wildlife heritage.
One of the things when we were talking about like your vision for your future, one of the things that it came across is that you're trying to shed a light and a focus on these people that are not known or are forgotten sometimes. So through your work, also in your store and education and everything, how you're putting like a light on these people that people don't know about. Be it the fishermen that give you their last fish, be it like elders that have been forgotten by society. And film looks like an amazing way to do it as well.
It's our responsibility, isn't it? We are blessed, you and I, to
we are very
have
blessed.
some sun on our faces that allows us to have a voice on Instagram, on Facebook, on wherever it is. We have a bit of a voice, and it's up to us to use that voice to champion the cause of those who don't. Be that people, be that a patch of forest, be it a fish. We are the ones. We don't have time left. We have no time. We need to get on with this. And it's up to us. It's our responsibility to use what light we have on us to shine it on those who don't.
How do you intend to do that from now on?
I don't know. With your help.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy. You actually have quite some plans, I have to say. Like, it's very modest of you, but considering it's not that I've just met you, we've been speaking for a few days now. You actually do have some plans about it that seem great, both on education, both on working with universities, be it people, corporations. You were saying about like even the desert, that you were saying I would love to take people with mental health issues to the desert so that they can go through these processes and connecting and all these things. So you do have a lot of
it. All I can do is go with what my heart and passions feel, and I run it. I've so little time. I'm sure you're the same, and I don't have great business acumen. I'm not great in company. I can do what I can do. So I'm just doing that as much as I can until I meet people such as yourself and you go, oh, we could do that. Okay, great. I need help to with the logistics, with the manifesting of these ideas into reality. I have such clarity of what can be achieved, but I need your help with it. I really do. Because ideas are only ideas. But they're useless until they become reality. But so I need help with that. But when we do, we can do a huge amount of good.
I think this is a great way for us. I still have like some final questions, And I do have like 3 pages more of questions, but we'll do a second episode, or probably a third and fourth, because this probably might be a double episode. What would you ask of people, first of all? People that are listening, how can they support? What can they do?
You know what? I'd like to not answer that. I'd like to talk to you about that, because that's what I don't know. I would like to work with you to come up with structure and to turn that into physical action.
Mm-hmm.
I can paint beautiful worlds of what I would like to create and how we can do it, and these wonderful things and how much good it will do. But what I need help is to break that down into a reality of, okay, if you do this, it will help do this. So I'd like not to answer that until we've talked it through, and then maybe you can do a follow-up and do
you do a follow-up episode.
Yeah, and go, or you can do one where you go, okay, having talked this through with Toby, here's how you can help. Oh, here's 12 things.
So that's our break for the next episode that we'll record, and hopefully our projects will come through. We are talking about a lot of really cool stuff, including like starting to try to take people on different experiences and teaching people how to be like animals and lead like animals. I think that's a great concept we are coming through.
And it's not us moving to a place of pretending to be like an animal. It's like we are animals. We need to forget this separation. And for hundreds of thousands of years, our senses, how we communicate, how we react, is as an animal. We just need to remember it. We're just cloaked by this modern world of it. It's dulled our senses. We just need to lift that mantle off and to re-engage with what we already know.
Now, just a little bit of housekeeping to finish. Last year you were doing very successfully public speaking with National Geographic. You have a lot of content. Sometimes you're in my opinion, too modest about it. Where can people know more about you? You have a website. What's your website?
TobyStrong.com.
Okay, and there are people if they're interested in get you to public speaking, they can contact you through there.
Just contact me through that. And I think because I'm visual, a lot goes onto Instagram, which is Toby Strong 1. That's probably, those two are the first places I would go. You can always find my contacts on there and reach out.
Yeah, and eventually we'll start producing a little more things.
Exactly.
Toby, thank you so much. See you soon. It was such a pleasure. Not only this interview, but these days have been amazing.
Really special.
It's been an honor
to
be in Ibiza. And we are off to some sunsets. We hope you enjoyed, but we have to enjoy the rest of the day as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead Sex Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Please support us by giving us 5 stars and following us. You can continue the conversation on comments on our LinkedIn page under Leeds Adventures. See you next week.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Lead Sex Podcast is only possible thanks to our amazing team. Fran Santenheld, Alexander Ritter, Mariana Ribeiro Brazão, Julia Billick, Linus Lamar Lunds, and Nathalie Tyson. A special thanks to the team at Riverside and Jonathan Keeson.